Then we've got the cropped frame digital SLR. Now, one of the main differences between this and the previous cameras that we've looked at, again, is in the viewfinder. We have an optical viewfinder again on the back of the camera, but this works in a slightly different way to the bridge camera. The light still comes in through the lens, but this time it's reflected by a 45-degree mirror inside the body, and then it goes up into the top of the camera and comes out of the eyepiece at the back. So you have a very large and very clear viewing screen, which gives you possibly the best view that you're ever going to get of your taking image. One of the other great advantages, as we've just seen, is that the lens is removable. And this is the first camera that we've seen where this is possible. Now, most DSLRs come with what's called a kit lens, which is usually a fairly modest wide angle to telephoto zoom. But you can take that off, as we can see, and replace it with one of a huge range of other lenses: extreme wide angle, extreme telephoto, wide aperture lenses which enable you to take pictures in very low light, macro lenses for close-up photography, and lots of other variants, both from the camera manufacturers themselves or very often from independent lens makers as well. So this does give us the biggest range of options for creative photography. Most digital SLRs will also give you a very large range of modes and settings, which gives you a good control over the creative aspects of your picture taking. The possible disadvantages with the SLR is that they tend to be larger and heavier, and certainly noisier as well, because we have got the mirror inside, which has to flip up and down, and a shutter inside as well, a mechanical shutter. They will tend to be quite a lot noisier than any of the options that we've looked at up to now. Another problem which we can also run into, which is unique to the SLR, is that dust can get inside, particularly when you're changing the lens, and this can get onto the sensor, and that can cause dark marks on the lighter parts of the image. It is possible to blow these off or get cleaning kits to clean the sensor off if that becomes a problem, but it is nevertheless a little bit of a nuisance, and because you are changing the lens potentially quite a lot, that is the main way that dust will get inside. Now, most digital SLRs, including this one, are what are called cropped sensor. The physical size of the sensor inside the camera is measured against the old 35mm standard, which was a 24 by 36mm frame. So if the sensor inside is smaller than that, it's what's called a cropped sensor. Now, that only has any relevance if we're talking about relating these camera lenses to the lenses that we used to have on 35mm cameras, because say if you had a 50mm lens, which was a standard lens on a 35mm camera, that will effectively now become something like a 75 or 80mm lens on a cropped sensor SLR such as this. That can be an advantage, of course, for telephoto lenses where we're looking for extra focal length, but it's a disadvantage for wide angle lenses because of course we're trying to get the widest angle that we can, and cropping a bit out of the middle of it is not very good. So that's a slight disadvantage with a cropped sensor. So the way to get around the cropped sensor issue is to go to a camera like this, which is a full frame digital SLR. The sensor inside is, roughly speaking, 24 by 36mm, so it corresponds exactly to the old 35mm format. And so all of the lenses and the focal lengths that we use on this camera are going to relate exactly to the old 35mm standard. Another advantage of having a larger sensor inside is that a larger sensor is able to detect light more easily. So generally you'll get better low light performance using a camera such as this. And also having a physically bigger sensor means that the number of individual pixels on that sensor can be increased. And we can get up to some quite big numbers on these cameras. This is a 21 megapixel camera, and they go up even from there to even higher numbers. So if you are in the business of making very, very high quality images and large prints, posters and this kind of thing, this is the kind of camera which will give you the amount of image information which you're going to need to be able to go to those very large sizes. Now, of course, all the cameras that we've looked at up to now take still pictures. That's what they are, they're still cameras. But nearly all of them also have some kind of movie capability, right from little compacts like this, which tend to take fairly small fairly scratchy movies, which nevertheless are quite viewable, right through the card up to the full frame digital SLR, and this particular one will take full high definition moving pictures. And in fact there is a whole industry now growing up around these type of cameras, providing all sorts of extra lenses, accessories, lens hoods, sound adapters and various other things, which will turn this type of camera into a really serious video camera, so you can use it for either medium equally well. So don't dismiss video as being a bit of a gimmick. It is becoming nowadays a much more serious option on all of the cameras that we've looked at. As far as selecting the exact make and model to buy, what I would suggest is to check out camera magazines or one of the many camera comparison sites that there are on the internet, and choose 3 or 4 cameras that fit the specification and the price range that you have in mind. And then, very importantly, do try to check them all out in a shop and look particularly at things like the size and the weight and the handling, whether you find the controls and the buttons easy to use, and whether you find the menus understandable, because those things can vary greatly from one model and one manufacturer to another. And that way you will hopefully end up buying a camera that gives you the results that you want and which you enjoy using. So I hope that's given you some useful ideas for things to look out for when you're considering buying a new digital camera.